So we've got these different structures which are unavoidable in terms of geographies and territories and what's been used, like Mocha versus Wi-Fi or whatever. But then in the next tier we've got, will the devices work together, which comes to this kind of USB point. And DLNA, I guess, is a big step towards that. And I would think that, you know, I've certainly heard people say that unless we do get to a basic standard for plug and play with consumer devices, and indeed for setup of home networks, then we're going to have a real problem getting this implementation. But then you've got the rights problem and the DRM problem. So I mean DLNA good enough and likely to become at least a standard for plug and play of the devices on the network. Yes. But then what about the CA DRM type problem?
I think there's a lot of progress being made in that area, both in terms of standards as well as in terms of innovations from companies like Irdetto and others. I think the key is when you come into a home network environment, usually you're talking about conditional access protected content. If you're wanting to make that content available to the rest of the home network, then you have to be able to successfully transcript that content's protection into a format that's acceptable for other devices on the network. DTCP/IP, as specified within DLNA, is an excellent choice there. The key is to make sure that that translation point doesn't become another point of attack for piracy to extract the purely digital content. So how you protect that with technologies like Irdetto's cloakware obfuscation and white box cryptography technology is very key. In terms of dealing with multiple DRMs, whether it be in the home network or over the top, the other key is obviously the back-end systems. If you're talking about over the top, or let's say even on a managed IP network from a telco or cable operator, you have to have a back-end that supports multiple DRM schemes, that's aware of what devices are being used on the network, and can provide the content not only in the codec and the format, but also in the encryption that device is capable of using. And so our Irdetto broadband backend system does exactly that and is purely DRM agnostic. Irdetto doesn't even have a DRM technology that we own ourselves. We believe that the future is embracing the standards.
But doesn't that speak to the point of the gateway, wherever you put that point, having to be quite clever? I mean, if it's got to accommodate all these different standards and potential DRMs on whatever kind of a chip it's got in there, right, that's not going to be a particularly cheap chip. And it's going to have to sit in your set-top box, you know, as the network provider.
Yeah, there's truth in that. I mean, we're looking at the gateway architecture right now, yeah, and there's a bit of a debate in our industry as to whether you need, whether it's a device where DRMs, multiple DRMs sort of pass through the gateway, or whether DRMs are actually terminated at a gateway and then transcripted into a DTCP/IP, for example, which we, by the way, use already for protecting our content in the home. So yeah, that's an open debate, and that's one of the problems that has to be solved. I don't see it as a problem as much as we just have to pick. I mean, we can do end-to-end DRM, but our experience is more than just protecting the content. It's actually the part of presenting the content. So there's an equal problem to DRM, which is presentation of the experience. Yeah. So I may have a gateway in the home that I could deliver protected content to somebody's mobile device or their PC or whatever. I don't want to just deliver the content. I have a whole experience around that content. And one of the problems we have to solve as an industry is how does a service provider do that other than providing the box myself, which is the traditional set-top box model, or me having to port an application or develop an application for every platform that's out there, which is, you know, really not a scalable position. Or we all agree on some platform. There, you know, DLNA has looked at this thing called CEA 2014. There's other proposals out there for some type of technology. Some people call it a remote user interface technology, but it's not really remote user interface. It's just some sort of common platform where the gateway or even in the cloud could send the content and a user experience to some third-party device, and that device could render that experience, let the consumer go through it, and it's a Cox experience. And that's an equal problem to the DRM that we have to solve that's still open.
But will the consumer electronics industry allow this? That basically you push your navigator to the TV set?
This is one of those fundamental conflicts that they want to differentiate their product. They would some of them, I'm not going to mention names, would explicitly like to disaggregate our service into just the content and let them do all the user experience. That's not the business we're in.
I think there's some support from the consumer electronics industry to allow that. We're seeing a rise in the number of connected TV applications that are operator specific as well. So I know, for an instance, with some of our customers, LG and Samsung are creating connected TV applications that hook into our back-end content management systems, so our operator customers are able to present their VOD library on a TV out of the box. So it may be that the future is a little bit more complex than it is today, because I, as an operator, am going to have my set-top box experience. In Europe, the use of CI Plus as a conditional access module is very common. So I, as an operator, can provide my basic broadcast experience that way, but by having an over-the-top application as well on the TV, I can also provide my VOD library, so I don't lose that revenue, and that's very key.
Let's just finish on the functionality of the hardware of the network first. We've had these panels before. We've had proponents of Wi-Fi as the key to the home network, for instance, and others who have a different methodology. I mean, and I'd just like to ask, I mean, do you think Wi-Fi is usable for a full fat home network, doing all the kinds of things that Vince has already talked about?
Wi-Fi is part of the solution, but it does not solve everything. If you want a reliable high-speed connection between two rooms that are remote in a house, Wi-Fi doesn't solve it, I'm afraid. Then you need something better. You need wires. But Wi-Fi is part of the solution, because if you want to do it mobile device, you need Wi-Fi or maybe Bluetooth, but that won't be a high-speed connection, I'm afraid. So Wi-Fi is certainly part of the game.
Well, as we look across the different geographies, as we said, we know that coax is universal throughout houses in the United States. You've got multiple rooms that have Wi-Fi, they got the coax connections. Most houses have the Wi-Fi, but as you say, when you get these larger homes, you do have zones which you can't get it. Now, with the 802.11n, you can get some of the broadband speeds. And if you look at HD video, where you're talking about 9 megabits per second type of bandwidth requirements, you can get multiple HD distributions. But if you've got remote parts of the home,
or interference,
you're not going to get that.
God forbid anyone should try and pop popcorn.
That's also a bad thing of Wi-Fi. The more it's available, the
and you'd like to have some type of universal standard like a G.hn, which you can hopefully do across, whether it's phone line, whether it's power, whether it's coax within the facility, and have something that is universal for interfaces on the platforms. But
the bottom line is we need to look in each geography where we have a customer at what their specific situation is and come up with a solution that suits them the best. I
mean, you talked about bridging all these different networks, and that kind of inevitably, certainly for the foreseeable future, all home networks will be some kind of a hybrid. But Wi-Fi as the sort of second cousin of the family, so to speak, or the best efforts part of the family, as you also spoke about.
I think that's right in the short term. Now, we do have the white spaces that have just opened up, at least in North America. I don't know if that's happening in Europe. Now, it's less bandwidth than the 2.4 gig band per channel, but unless they do some channel sharing or bonding, I don't know how they're going to actually use that. So I'm interested to see what technologies come out of that, because at least in North America, that's down in the 600 megahertz range, which should have a lot better propagation through the walls, through the whole home. So maybe there will be some Look, we're technology agnostic. I would love a wireless technology that's no interference, that gives me 200 megabits per second with quality of service throughout the whole home. Give it to me, we're done. It just, until it's here, I'll continue to have to depend on things like MoCA, where I have a coaxial connection between 2 points, that I can get a guaranteed 175 megabits today, and with the next version up to 400. But look, people love wireless. I mean, if we had a good solution, I'm personally looking for a wireless HDMI solution right now, because I would love it for my entertainment center, but still some work to be done.